So in this segment, we're going to be talking about the DUP's Edwin Poots took unlawful, politically motivated decision to halt Irish sea border checks, the High Court rules. So former DUP minister Edwin Poots unlawfully took a politically motivated decision in order to halt an Irish sea border checks, the High Court has ruled today. Woof. The judge does not, hold back in their statements either, but this was clearly a political decision made by Poots, and boy is he reminded of it. Quashing the instructions issued by the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs staff, the Northern Ireland Department. A judge held that Mr. Poots breached a legal obligation to implement inspections on goods entering Northern Ireland's ports. It's not clear if he personally will be punished for this, but most likely not. Mr. Poots, agricultural minister at the time, said he had received legal advice that he could direct a halt in the absence of approval for the inspections from the wider Stormont executive. So he was told that he didn't have to get approval from Stormont, which was weird at the time. The question is who gave him this legal advice, because he seems to have been misinformed. Like, the arguments he made at the time did not make any sense. Mr. Justice Colton said it is difficult to draw conclusion other than the decision under challenge was an overtly political one taken for political reasons and as part of a political campaign in opposition to the protocol. And that's pretty damning. I think Poots at the time claimed it was due to trade disruption and safety concerns, but clearly the judge does not agree. Despite Mr. Poots' instructions, border checks on agri-food products entering Northern Ireland have continued pending the outcome of the judicial review. So a judge put an interim order at the time to make sure the checks were still implemented. The increasing workload of carrying out some of the port's inspections had led to staffing levels rising from 4 port health officers to 32 employees. The court has heard, that's not a big surprise given the fact that checks were having to take place now compared to before Brexit when they didn't. A barrister for Mr. Poots contended that checks are not legally required because Northern Ireland's defined territorial standing within the UK, and the issue is other countries do have internal borders. Making that argument makes no sense. He claimed post-Brexit regulations governing import control have no obligation on the minister's officials to carry out inspections. And this, in my opinion, is pretty weird because DEFRA gave that responsibility. The DEFRA department in Westminster gave responsibility to Stormont and their agricultural minister to carry out checks. It was expected that person would govern over the checks, so this does not make any sense. The court also heard the decision to stop border checks came after Poots was served with a pre-action letter by loyalist activist Jamie Bryson. In the correspondence, Bryson contended that an absence of the executive authority meant the regulations do not require the inspections to be carried out. And now, this guy, Bryson, he's not a lawyer, so his advice would have no legal standing. If this was the person Poots consulted on stopping the checks, then that's a whoopsie from him, especially when, as a minister, he would have ample access to legal expertise. So, very strange stuff going on here. Justice Colston, pointed out that the instructions had been issued at a time when the DUP First Minister Paul Given's resignation was imminent, and consistent with the party's previous declaring a strategy of opposition to the protocol. He stated, "It may well be that for politicians, as the DUP leader said in September 2021, there was no easy answers when the law required one thing and the politics demands anything else." And I think here the judge is saying that the DUP were put into a box by their voters and the DUP opposition to the protocol, that Poots may have felt his hands were tied. However, the judge says, from the court's perspective, there is an easy answer, and that is the law must be obeyed. And this in the end is the truth, regardless of if your voters want something. If it breaks the law, you'll end up losing in court. And here Poots and the DUP took a big loss. It's not clear what the legal ramifications are from here, but the protocol is clearly here to stay. Kind of further to this, Poots ordered the end of the checks at a time when Paul Given handed his resignation, essentially killing off the Stormont executive. And therefore, when Poots made his decision, Poots could argue that he didn't need any authority from the Stormont executive because the Stormont executive was collapsed. And so it does look like his timing was very much politically based here, at least if my timeline recollection is any good. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.